Hello, I was going to wait for some people to enter the stream.
Design.
Anyone there? Not yet. So, exactly 1 year ago and 1 month ago, to the dot, a guy named Ted Kaczynski died in prison. This guy, right? Kaczynski basically was a terrorist. He was somebody who blew up universities and airports, hence the name Unabomber, universities and airports. It's a reference to. Now, he targeted people who were professors at universities, targeted people that he thought that were responsible for rapid technological progress. He targeted university professors and, of course, airlines. Airlines may be because of the carbon footprint they leave on the planet, and airlines because they help people go from one place to another, and help people move to rural areas. And I guess in a roundabout way, they may contribute to deforestation. But so who was Ted Kaczynski? So basically, in his formative years, he grew up in Chicago, one of the highest amount of Polish people outside of Poland. You can see by name, he's a Polish American. Long story short, his parents were both second generation Polish Americans. He skipped a few years of school and he excelled in school so much he left high school at 16. He was known for being extremely shy, and he was a math prodigy. And he was housed in a university accommodation that was specifically made for kids that were a bit younger or kids fragile. Okay, so his upbringing, right, he was involved in many activities, like the German club, marching band, maths, biology. He was involved in a project called MK Ultra. I won't go into detail about what that is exactly, but MK Ultra basically was the CIA conducting psychological experiments on how did I get to this? Yeah, MK Ultra, the CIA was conducting experiments involving LSD and other illicit drugs basically see the effects of certain psychological techniques on people. Now, some people's project basically fried fried his brain and made him see look. They were giving kids electrical shocks, hypnotizing him, depriving him of sensory stimuli, isolating him. They were abusing him verbally, maybe even sexually, torturing him basically. So and Ted was younger than the other students, so it's like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old going with this. So another interesting thing about Ted's upbringing is that for a period of time he was going through depression, and he was also upset that he could not find a female partner, considering transitioning to becoming a female. But when he went to the office for the doctor to do this, he lost his mind and didn't tell the doctor about his transition. But afterwards, he made a vow to basically kill people, like psychiatrists or other people he hated. This is when he broke bad effectively. So he went to the University of California, Berkeley, taught maths. Actually, I think he went to the University of Chicago, actually, and the University of California was his first choice. But I heard a story that he went to the University of Chicago instead to teach there. He went there because they paid for his schooling fees and paid for his often as well, and then he wanted to go to California, but he didn't go there instead. Anyway, out of the way. So why do I think that Ted Kaczynski is still relevant today? I think that you know Ted's manifesto is around 35,000 words, and I've in fact read all of those words. That's probably the longest piece of writing that I've read continuously, but it was so interesting that I had to read it. Ted Kaczynski basically had the idea that modern society was unnatural, that because we don't have to survive, we don't have to hunt for food, we don't have to build our houses, we don't have to physically exert ourselves. We effectively fill up our time with surrogate activities like getting a PhD in chemistry or playing video games, playing chess, playing sports, trying to live longer. Ted defines a surrogate activity as any activity you can do that if you were to not do it, and you're to either spend that time, doing survival tasks like hunting, you would not feel like you missed out. Ted Kaczynski basically thought that we as humans have basically reached a point in our development where we are living very unnatural lives, and the system will prioritize itself above anything else. Ted Kaczynski thought that the system effectively classified mental health illnesses as anything that would not allow you to be functional in the system. Ted thought that most people who are described as mentally ill are just people who would not benefit the system, who would not work as a cog in the system, and therefore the system would turn on them and classify them as mentally ill, basically. So Ted also predicted that in this day and age, actually, I'll show you a little chart. So we can see here that mental health is a pressing and significant topic for most Americans. We can see that roughly 53% of Americans have some kind of mental health issue. 18% of those, 18% of people separate from that 53% have issues with stress. The point I'm making is, as the years have gone by, more and more people in the States struggle with mental health illnesses. And Ted Kaczynski predicted this. He basically thought that as societies become more and more developed, they have to basically employ more and more methods to control people, or else people will effectively become mentally ill. And mental illness itself is just a symptom of the society being so unnatural that we react in ways like having depression, anxiety. This is Ted's manifesto. His manifesto has got a very interesting story behind it, right? Because basically, Ted sent to the Washington Post and the New York Times. Okay, bear in mind, it's 1,000 words. That's a very long story for any of these publications. But Ted basically said, okay, if you post my manifesto in your publications, then I will stop doing explosions. I'll stop bombing mail bombs to professors or to airport officials. And they did do that. They posted the manifestos to the Washington Post and to the New York Times. And interestingly enough, Ted's brother-in-law and sister, I believe, recognized his handwriting from the manifesto and tipped off the FBI. He referred himself as FC because, I think he wanted to throw people off. He wanted people to think that he was like part of like a big environmentalist movement. So he framed himself as FC. This was in 1995. Now, Ted was an interesting character because he had an IQ of approximately 167. So to put that in perspective, I'm just getting up the IQ distribution calculator. So Ted Kaczynski IQ was basically 167. Now, IQ is not not the be all and end all for intelligence measuring. From what I know, the IQ is done by the US Army to see if people could fight in the army or not. If you had an IQ below 85, then you couldn't fight in the army. But if I plug in Ted's IQ into this, basically, right, 99.9996 of people had lower IQ than Ted. Let's say in the US. So let's say 1995 when he was arrested, right? Okay, population of USA in 1990. So population of USA in 1990 was 251 251 million. Okay, so in the States there was this many people living there. Okay. This many people living in the US at that time, right? So 99.996. Basically, right? Okay, if we add I was trying to okay, so basically is that right? In the States, in the United States, roughly 1,000 people had the same IQ as Ted Kaczynski or more at the time he was alive. That was it. That's insane, right? So he was so smart that out of 250 million people, only 1,000 people had a high IQ than him. Okay, now back to Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. Where is it gone? Okay, it's basically right. Ted Kaczynski had a very unique way of making bombs. He was extremely high IQ that I just showed you earlier. He was very good at throwing off the authorities. He would make bombs out of nails or just pesticides, things that could easily be found. Nothing would throw people off. Like let's say you go to a shop and buy I don't know 10 car batteries. That's suspicious. But if you're buying 10 nails, packets of nails, that's suspicious. So Ted was able to evade, the FBI surveillance for a long time, living in a remote cabin in Montana. That Montana is one of the most remote parts of the United States, right? Its population, right, is only 1 million, but it's a very large state. Okay, uh, how big's Montana? Montana is 255. What was that? Is that okay? So 147. Okay, how big is London? Okay, so sorry. Montana is 380 thousand square kilometers. Width is 130,000 kilometers. So square kilometers. So basically, England is smaller than Montana, way smaller, but like 80 million people, and Montana has 1 million people. So Ted was living in a very rural part of the States. Uh, his cabin is like was on display in the DC like museum. Um, he was pretty self-sufficient. He had no electricity in his cabin. He basically he went to the library to read classical works of literature in the original language, but apart from that, he just stayed to himself. I guess survived. Um, I wonder where that cabin is. I think somebody may have. I think you can't actually view it now. The museum it was being showed. This one's like defunct. Anyway, back to Ted's manifesto, right? I'll give you background on Ted Kaczynski and who he was. Now, this is a very long manifesto. I cannot read all of it, but in my opinion, the standout parts for me was like talks about how industrialization has ruined society. I remember in 1995, this is before social media, this is before the financial crash. He says that people in like advanced countries, they can live long, but life's unfulfilling, right? Though we are advancing technology, we have damaged the natural world. So you're the hardcore like Greenpeace activist. His answer wasn't putting taxes or tariffs on gas or electric. His answer is to blow up any symbol of tech and its advancement, to kill professors or to blow up airports. So he was the original you know the original, what do they call people who are obsessed with climate? I don't know, climate Karen. Anyway, he is anti-leftist. He basically thought that left-wing people were people who only saw the world in a materialist and were very collectivist and were preoccupied with maintaining the current systems that therefore prioritize system over the individual and would eliminate competition and would effectively uh, promote the advancement of technology, which would make deforestation. Now, Ted was very deforestation. Basically, after he went off into the woods and he decided to live like a hermit and a recluse, he realized that beautiful Montana, uh, countryside being deforested. So he would no longer be able to live his lifestyle if that continued. So, he decided to combat deforestation, aggressive way. Now, I can't really read that entire manifesto, but it's still on the Washington Post's website. And one thing I find interesting about Manifesto is that Ted predicts that eventually there'll be a time of intelligence that will be as smart, if not smarter than humans, and it will basically do all of the jobs that we as humans uh, do, but better. So he thinks that eventually computers will replace lawyers, doctors, engineers, and we will just basically live our lives waiting tables or being taxi drivers, and in our free time just knocking about doing creative stuff. He thought that was a very sad way to live. He thought that the singularity would basically cause us to live even more unfulfilling lives. Now, funnily enough, Ted was actually around way before ChatGPT and way before AI advanced. So his logic was that the same way the car was brought to people as a convenience that was optional, but eventually in a lot of American suburbs, you need a car. So in many, like I've been to suburbs of LA, I've been to suburbs of New York, and if you're living there, you require a car to really get around because in most American suburbs, within a 30-minute radius, like drive, there's no shops, there's no amenities. So if you've not got a car, you're kind of screwed out there. So initially, cars were introduced to the Americans as an optional thing, like buy this car so you don't have to walk to work, you don't have to get a horse and carriage to work. Okay? But eventually, cities that were built in a car-centric way. So now all these new cities, these new developments, because America was built after the industrialization, were built in a way where you required a car if you were living in most of the residential areas. So now having a car went from being optional to being required. And in a country like the US or any other Western country, if you own a car, you have to abide by a strict set of rules. Regardless of your emotions or your impulses, you've got to drive at a certain speed. Whether or not you've been cut off on the road, you have to basically be very vigilant to the road rules. Ted thought that basically that's an example of technology being introduced, people being forced to use said tech to the point where they now have to abide by a system that's imposed on them by the government or big companies and corporations. And Ted realized that effectively all of our lives are like this. Any comfort of the modern world, whether it be a phone or a car, aeroplanes, gas heaters, initially these things were given to people as an optional thing that you could buy if you had the money or if you just wanted to. Now, our entire societies are based around the assumption that you own a laptop, that you have the internet connection, that you have a gas heater, that you have a car. So now you need these things, you need to buy these things, you are forced to earn enough to buy these things, you are forced to abide by any regulations and any rules given to you by the government regarding these things or given to you by the corporations. And Ted thought that AI basically would be the ultimate form of that. Initially, people will be offered AI brain chips as an option. Okay, you can be implanted with an AI chip. Interestingly enough, Ted was around before the time of Neuralink, so he predicted this. He thought that people would be given the option, like a phone or a car, to have an AI chip in their brain, and eventually society would change to the point where everyone needs an AI chip. So now you need an AI chip to go to school, you need an AI brain chip to go to work, you need an AI brain chip to go into a car to buy a phone. So Ted's rationale was basically that any technology cannot be held back from development. Eventually, it will go from being a luxury good, an optional thing, to being a necessity you have to buy, and that you are basically governed by it. So his idea was to abolish all technology and not leave anything to spare. So he wanted to just demolish the entire system. He wanted people just to basically live like homesteaders off the grid. So I think yeah, did I read Manifesto? I actually did read the entire thing. Yeah, it's a very interesting read. Of course, I don't condone his his methods. Blowing up people is obviously wrong. He obviously was either schizophrenic, uh, psychopathic, or sociopathic, and but he had a dangerous combination of being highly intelligent and being delusional and being schizophrenic. So he had to basically distort his worldview so much that he thought that the best way of dealing with his environmental concerns would be to, which I think is insane. I read the whole thing in that one sitting. It's a very interesting read, and I'll probably end the stream now. So I'll stream again tomorrow probably. See you.